Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought it'd be time to chat about a future vehicle, since it's a Sunday and also a time just to kind of chill, and it's been pretty ridiculous the last few weeks with the dev server stuff, which has been extended until the 6th, so we might be having a look at more stuff in the future. Generally, usually around this time, we normally have the updates. It's time to talk about like the update content and all of that, but I thought it would be worth having a look at some patterns that have obviously been happening. One of the things that is kind of a stalwart of this update, Firebirds, is strike aircraft. Strike aircraft coming in and hammering the ground. When you have a look at stuff like the Su-34, which has already had to be pre-nerfed before it's even come out with the Grom, same with the Tornado, which has been pre-nerfed with its Brimstone, then you even have stuff like the F-15E Strike Eagle, which also might have been pre-nerfed with its engines, and even the good old Israeli F-15 that has come in too. These are just some of the additions that they're adding. Obviously you have the RMV for the Mirage 2000 for the French too. All of these vehicles are designed around mostly a ground striking idea, but a lot of them, apart from the Tornado, are also these multi-role behemoths. They can pretty much do whatever they want in the game. You just have to pick the playstyle and go with it. And does that mean they'll be as good as some of the air superiority fighters at the highest echelons? Maybe not, but it does mean that they're going to be good at everything, and that is kind of scary. So looking at that, and looking at the fact that a lot of these nations are getting even more powerful machines from an air-to-air point of view, and also from a CAS point of view, once again that multi-role idea, it's now time to chat about a vehicle we chatted about maybe a month or two ago, and it's the A-18. The A-18 is one of those vehicles that will come to the game. It's already been confirmed that it's going to come to the game. The only question is when. We also know that it will come to America first, maybe alongside other nations, or maybe just for America first. And when you think about the general, I suppose, kind of setup of stuff like the F-18, the leaks that have happened, and also this general update, it makes the most sense that that vehicle will come out in the December update. Now, why do I say that? Well, first of all, we already had the leak, right? The leak was about a month ago, talked about the FA-18 coming, not just in its original form, but also in the Swiss setup as kind of a part of a subtree for the Germans. One of the problems that the Germans have right now is they just don't have a competitive top-tier vehicle. They've had to put down the ice once again to 13.0 because it's struggling so much in that current meta. Turns out you can't just keep upgrading an F4 and hope for the best. But it is kind of a weird area for Germany because they're obviously waiting until their newer projects were coming around, such as some of the Euro projects that were turning up. So you have to find solutions to these things. For example, for certain nations like Japan, they just made up vehicles, stuff like the F-16 for example, which never existed. Also, for other nations, they bring in other nations for them. So for Britain, they were struggling for the longest time at the high echelon with their air superiority aircraft being stuck on the Phantoms once again, while everybody else was getting new toys. So what did they do? They brought in the Gripen from the South African side of things, and you can see them do this over and over again across the board. Now, one of the things that has kind of gone out the window the last few updates is the idea of balance at the top echelon of the game. You have some very dominant vehicles, and then everything else is kind of just left back. And the way that it seems like balance is being sought after is by just adding basically the same thing to everybody. And when you have a look at certain vehicles, they must be targeted for doing this. The F-16 obviously was definitely one of these, where pretty much every nation apart from, good old Russia ended up getting one. There's a few which didn't, but the idea is if you spread them across the board, even through the Benelux stuff for France, it leads to parity because everybody's using the same equipment. Well, if you take that idea and have a look at the FA-18, it's exactly that. The F-A-18 is used by a ton of different countries. Now let's have a think, right, in terms of where it could end up in the game. So, obviously, it could go to America. It's been used for a long time. Obviously, the Super Hornet is coming now to replace it. But then you also have Australia, which has some. That could easily go to the British tech tree. You also have Canada, who have their CF-18s. That could also go to the British tech tree. Finland used FA-18s, so those go to the Swedish tech tree. Then you have Spain. That could easily go to the French tech tree if they wanted to. Switzerland, of course, used them, so therefore that goes to the German tech tree. And then you even have others, such as the good old Kuwaitis and even the Malaysians, which you could make arguments for them going to any of the other tech trees if you really felt like it, depending on political or military ties to whoever's in the game. So it's one of those vehicles which can fill a bunch of gaps for nations which are struggling at the highest echelon because they don't have the newest technologies. And therefore, it's going to come in, not just for the US, but also for a bunch of other nations at the same time. The only real question is, do they all come in at once? Obviously, with stuff like the F-16s, it took a while for all of them to be added to the different nations to increase that parity level. And for me, when I think about it, it makes sense for it to come in for that December update. Because if it doesn't come in for December, then of course you have next year where it could, come in and have a bit of fun with. But generally, December is an update which is usually focused around air, even back in the days when ground was the one really pushing the envelope in terms of the game. So let's have a think about it, right? Last year, for the December update, you had air superiority, which was F-15, Su-27. So that obviously was a very, very heavy air updates. You even had stuff like the F-15J, the Mirage, the Gripen, the Baz, all of those things. And then the year before that, in December, you had Apex Predators, which was Tornado, MiG-29, and F-16. Another incredibly heavy air update. Then you had Winged Lions in the year before. So in 2021, this was the addition of the Israeli air tech tree, and also stuff like the F-105 being added, which was quite a large addition, stuff like the MiG-27K, which affected ground quite a lot, and there was also a lot of interesting ground vehicles, but once again, it's an update that was focused around air. Then, in 2020, you have the one which is slightly different, which was Hot Tracks. But you also have to remember, when it comes to Hot Tracks, this was a general update which came out after New Power. So this was more of a generalized update where they added a bunch of different vehicles, but also mechanics, but it was a lot smaller than the usual December updates because they'd put so much into New Power, which obviously changed the game forever in terms of the Daegor engine and also in terms of many other setups. So that is something which, has to be at least looked at. And then the update before that in 2019, you have Northern Wind, which was another aviation one, the addition of the Swedish air tech tree, and also you had some ground stuff and quite a lot of naval stuff, but the main part was the aviation tech tree for Sweden. And even before then, in 2018, 6 years ago, you had update Supersonic, which was the first time we saw a lot of the kind of new era of War Thunder. Now that update also had the Italian ground forces in it, and there's always a meme with the Italian forces where for some reason, even though they were added in updates, they just kind of get forgotten about, and then you focus on other things. So yeah, you got the whole Italian ground tech tree, but the main focus once again for the update was the good old aviation. It was the F-100D, the MiG-19PT, the Javelin, and also a bunch of premiums. So this is something that we see a lot in terms of these updates near Christmas. You have a decent focus on high-tier vehicles. You also get a bunch of different packs, because guess what? They want people to spend their Christmas money on these packs. So unless they're going to go heavy into ground high tier, which they might do because there are some options, it makes sense that instead they're going to go heavy into air top tier so they can sell stuff around the Christmas period where people usually have a bit more money. Just to give you an idea, in Update Apex Predators, there was the A-60 Tram, the MiG-21 Lazur M, the MiG-23 ML, the F-4J UK Phantom, the F-4EJ DTW, the J-7D, the F-104S TAF, the Mirage F-1C 200, and also there was the J-35XS and the Kafir Canard added. Basically a premium for each of the tech trees, which is nuts when you think about it. And this is kind of a trend that you see across the board. So in terms of the game, in terms of how many updates we have in a year, in terms of when the December update comes out, it makes complete sense that the A-18 would come out in December. Sometimes patterns can be foolish to follow, because sometimes they will fail you. But to be quite honest with War Thunder, it's pretty structured, so following them isn't that hard. At the end of the day, the next update that's coming out next week looks really fun. I'm looking forward to it. But at the same time, that December update could easily change the game forever. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.